unpredictable weather, a 6-hour sprint race, and chaotic traffic. These are all pretty good ways to describe the 6 hours of the Glen. But despite all the uncertainty in this race, it always produces some great racing. This is your Salem 6 Hours of the Glen race preview. The third race of the Michelin Endurance Cup schedule takes us to beautiful upstate New York in the village of Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen has a long and storied history that has made it one of the most famous circuits in North America. Located in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region, Watkins Glen began its racing history in 1948 on a 6.6 mile or about 10.5 kilometer road course that ran around the village. After 5 years of running on that course and a number of terrible accidents, the need was realized for a purpose-built road course facility. However, the remains of that old track are still intact today, and if you find yourself in the village of Watkins Glen for the race weekend, go and check out the old course. There are signs around the town that indicate its old route. It's a pretty cool drive. In 1956, the new purpose-built racetrack would open and hold its first race. And since 1956, there have been some changes that make Watkins Glen what we know it as today, but for the most part, the layout and feel of this track has stayed intact. Today, the 11-turn 3.4 mile or 5.47 kilometer circuit features 115 feet of elevation change. And one of the headlining events for Watkins Glen is the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen. It's been hosted at this track since 1968, with there just being a couple of years off for a few years when the track was bankrupt, and then we also missed the COVID year, but this 6-hour race has been a staple on the calendar. The track has also hosted some pretty iconic events like the Formula One United States Grand Prix. Every year NASCAR rolls to town. And then you also have SRO racing and some historic racing that takes place here. The track is a fairly quick one speed-wise and features a good mix of high, medium, and some low-speed corners. The lap times for the different classes will range from about the low to mid 1:30s for the GTP class up to about the 1 minute 40 second range for the GTDs. There are also some great passing opportunities around this track, such as the heavy braking zone for turn 1, heading into the inner loop, which is better known as the bus stop, and into turn 8, which is also known as the heel of the boot. Now, while this is the shortest of the Michelin Endurance Cup rounds, or tied for the shortest with the Indy 6 Hour, it still requires a tremendous amount of patience from the drivers as they're navigating through traffic. However, but with it being on the shorter end, it also requires a flawless performance. If you make a mistake here in this race, it's going to be very difficult to recover from it when the distance is only 6 hours. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, patience is going to be key around Watkins Glen, and one of the big reasons for that is traffic. All 4 of IMSA classes returned to the grid here at Watkins Glen for the first time since March. In fact, I talk about this some more in a recent video. I'll link that for you guys up in the corner. Another thing to watch for that's kind of crept in a little bit more in recent years is track limits. Now, thankfully, with IMSA and generally speaking the old school nature of the tracks that they go to, we don't really have to talk about track limits or track limit penalties that often, but there are a couple of turns at Watkins Glen that you need to keep an eye on. The exit of turn 1 was paved in recent years, mostly for the NASCARs that also share the facility over the summer. But it's very inviting for drivers to go wide on the exit of turn 1. You can't do that in IMSA. There, you do have to respect the track limits, so that's one spot to watch out for. And then the same can be said about turn 10 towards the end of the lap. Again, this used to be a large sand or gravel pit, but now has been paved over and is another spot that you got to watch out for track limits violations. With all the cars that we see on track and a relatively short track, we're also going to see plenty of full course yellows. In the last 3 years, Watkins Glen has produced 3, 5, and 5 full course yellows. So those full course yellows are going to play a big part in the race this year. I don't see a reason why we're not going to see more full course yellows. And that's going to be really key here when it comes down to the strategy that these teams are using in the race. Now, if you want even more to watch for in this year's race, then consider subscribing to the S's newsletter. It's absolutely free, and before every race weekend, I send you everything that you need to know heading into the race weekend, as well as a bonus thing to watch for. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description or by heading to offinthes.com. Watkins Glen will also see a few support series present. We do have one fewer support series this weekend than we have in previous years, but still a very healthy support series grid. Both the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series and the Porsche Carrera Cup North America will be in Watkins Glen for 2 races each, and there's a couple of strong grids there with 37 Lamborghinis and 30 Porsches on the docket. Then we also have the Michelin Pilot Challenge. They returned to support the WeatherTech Championship after they had their headlining weekend at Mid-Ohio a couple of weekends ago. There we'll see 22 GS entries and a very strong 17 cars in TCR. Now, it wouldn't really be a proper race at Watkins Glen if we didn't have to talk about weather, and once again, this weekend, weather is going to be a factor. Let's take a look at the Racecast Weather Report. You can check them out at Racecast Weather on Twitter, as I'm sure there's going to be some updates to this over the course of the week. You can see that there's a chance of rain virtually every day. The highest chance is on Thursday, where it's a 70% chance of showers, but the chance still lingers throughout the weekend, and we could see weather impacting qualifying as well as the race. Another thing to keep an eye on is the temperatures. We do see some moderate temperatures kind of in the middle of the weekend on Friday, but come race day, we're looking at a race day high of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty toasty conditions in upstate New York. We've also seen some pretty significant changes to the BOP. These changes started before the last round, really heading into Detroit, and we've seen a couple more tweaks here heading into this weekend's round at the Glen. Starting off with GTP, and IMSA made some changes on how they display the BOP in their notice board articles, so I've done my best to try and translate those over so we can see what the real changes are from Detroit. And really what we see is not too many significant changes. We do see the Acura gaining a little bit of weight, as well as the BMW. There are some maximum stint energy changes as well. I'm not going to dive deep into those, but I do want to quickly touch on the max power changes. So we have two different stages for GTP. We have stage 1, which is under 230 kilometers an hour, and then stage 2 power, which is over 240 kilometers an hour. In stage 1 power, we see one change that really jumps out at you, and that's with Cadillac. Cadillac gains 2.1% of stage 1 power. So this is the biggest change by far in the GTP class. And what it really translates to is that Cadillac is going to be probably better coming out of the corners than they have been in recent races. A little bit more power, hopefully bring them up that next level of competitiveness, and hopefully we'll see them contending with the likes of the BMWs, the Porsches, the Acuras, etc. come the end of this race. And then there's stage 2 power here. Acura and Lamborghini both got bumped up to maximum max power over 240 kilometers an hour. So that means really the only outlier here on the maximum power front is Porsche. They only have 92.3% of their maximum power available to them over 240 kilometers an hour. So we'll see how that might impact them on some of the long straightaways around Watkins Glen. On the GT side of it, we see some changes as well. The biggest weight change comes to BMW. They've shed 14 kilograms of weight from where they were at Detroit, and we see plenty of maximum power changes too. Again, with stage 1 power, Corvettes gained 2.6%, Lamborghini 2.3%, Lexus has gained 3.2%, Mercedes 4.2%, and Porsche 2.4%. Expect all of those manufacturers to be a little bit stronger, especially coming out of some of these corners at Watkins Glen. When it comes to max power available to them, this will be big at Watkins Glen as well. Those long straightaways, this is going to play a factor. Ferrari has gained 2.5%. Ford noticeably has lost 3.3%. That's a car that's really good on the high-speed tracks, so I suppose that's a change that makes a bit of sense here. Lexus has gained 2.5%. Mercedes notably up 4.9% from where they were at Detroit. And then finally, we have Porsche, who also gained 4.2% here. Let's talk about the grid size now, and after unfortunately a last-minute withdrawal, we are down to 55 entries in this race, which is one less than we had last year. But we are going to have 13 GTPs on the grid. That's an increase of 2 from 2024. 12 will feature an LMP2, that's a decrease of 1. 10 will feature in GTD Pro, also a decrease of 1. And we'll have 20 entries in GTD, a decrease of 1. Now, the late withdrawal from the race comes from the number 83 Iron Dames Porsche. Unfortunately, they won't be at Watkins Glen this weekend after driver Michelle Gadding sustained a foot injury during pit stop practice for last weekend's 24 Hours of Le Mans. Best wishes to her for a speedy recovery, and hopefully we'll see her back on the grid at Indy. Also worth noting in GTD is the return of Magnus Racing. After it was expected that we'd only see them for the Rolex and no more in 2025, they've returned to the grid for Watkins Glen, so great to see Magnus back on the IMSA grid. Last year it was number 7 Porsche Penske Motorsports 963 of Dane Cameron and Felipe Nasr, who completed 148 laps en route to narrowly winning the 6 Hours of the Glen, beating out the 01 Cadillac. In LMP2 was the number 88 AF Corsa entry of Luis Perez Companc, Nicholas Nielsen, and Lila Wadu taking the win there. Also notable here was the 74 Riley. They just missed out on their 4th straight class win at Watkins Glen, but still managed to hold on for 2nd. In GTD Pro, we saw the 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin take the win with Ross Gunn and Alex Riberas behind the wheel, while in GTD it was Philippe Ellis, Russell Ward, and Indy Donchi winning in the 57 Windward Racing Mercedes. Now there's a few keys to victory, I think, for this race at the Glen, and the first one really is you gotta treat this race almost like a 6-hour sprint race. Gone are the days where you can kick back and relax for a stint or two and then go hard at the end. If you want to have a chance at winning this race, you have to go hard from the word go. And if you're going to make a mistake in this race, you have to do it very early. It's only a 6-hour race, which sounds like a long time, but even if you do make that early mistake, everything has to go your way in order to claw your way back into this. So 6 Hours of the Glen, it's going to be like a 6-hour sprint race. It's going to be all out, and you have to absolutely minimize your errors in this shorter endurance race. You also have to manage the full course yellows here. As I said, there's probably going to be a number of full course yellows in this race, so that does a ton of things. It impacts drive time. It can significantly impact your strategy. This is an endurance race, so teams are also going to be looking for those endurance cup points at the halfway mark of the race. But you really have to make sure you're ready to pivot your strategy on the flip of a switch and ultimately use that to try and set yourself up for a win at the end of this race. Teams and drivers will also have to keep up with the changing track conditions. It's not going to be just a matter of going from rain conditions to sun. There's no guarantee that we're going to see rain on Sunday. However, with the temperatures being on the warmer side, we've seen plenty in years past where a cloud cover rolls over and it significantly cools the track temps. And the result of that is sometimes teams' air pressures that they have running out there in cars gets too low. It doesn't get as high as they think it's going to. This triggers an alert to IMSA that they're running insignificant air pressures in the tires, and ultimately can cause those cars to be brought in to replace tires, have an additional pit stop added on to resolve this issue. So to win this race, the teams are going to have to stay really on top of the ever-changing conditions. As for my picks in GTP, I'm going with the number 40 Cadillac. Wayne Taylor Racing finally broke through and had a solid result at Detroit. It wasn't solely on pure pace. They had some great strategy to get the 10 in position for that solid finish, but I think they're going to be able to build off of that strong performance here at Watkins Glen. They've been strong at Watkins Glen. The Cadillac has in past years. It's finished second 2 years in a row. And with some of those small BOP adjustments that we see going into this race, I do think that it could be a very strong race for Cadillac. Keep an eye on them in GTP. In LMP2, all eyes for me are on the 74 Riley. They won here 3 years in a row in LMP3. They finished second here last year, their first trip here in an LMP2, and they're currently leading the LMP2 championship standings. They've yet to break through with that big LMP2 victory. I think this is the weekend that they do it. Give me Riley Motorsports. In GTD Pro, give me the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW. BMW and that M4 GT3, or the M4 GT3 Evo now, has been strong around here at Watkins Glen. And Paul Miller Racing, who's running those cars, have also looked strong to start the season. While they've shown strong pace, they haven't really been able to put it all together yet. I think this is the weekend that Paul Miller Racing and BMW can do it. Give me the number 1 BMW in GTD Pro. And in GTD, give me the number 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche. We know that this lineup can be quick. I think that the Glen is going to suit that car well. I think this is a driver lineup that can get it done. So give me Wright Motorsports in GTD. Let's take a look at the championship standings now, presented by P1 Web Development. If you're looking for a custom website, then look no further than P1 Web Development. You can check them out at p1webdevelopment.com or click the link in the description. In GTP, it's number 7, Porsche Penske Motorsports 963, leading the way with 1,795 points. That's 70 points ahead of the sister number 6 Porsche. Number 24 BMW sits in third, 297 points back, with the 93 and the 10 rounding out the top 5. In LMP2, it's just 2 races into their season, but it is a very close battle here at the top. Number 74 Riley Motorsports entry leads with 645 points. That's just a 2-point advantage over the number 22 United Autosports entry. The number 43 Inter Europol, number 11 TDS Racing, and number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports entries round out the top 5. In GTD Pro, it's number 77 AO Racing Porsche, leading with 1,298 points. That's an 11-point advantage over the number 3 Corvette Racing entry. The 64 Ford Multimatic Motorsports Mustang is in third position. The number 81 Dragon Speed entry is in fourth, and rounding out the top 5, the 65 Ford. And in GTD, it's number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes, leading with 1,372 points. That's 124 points ahead of the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. The 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche, and number 96 Turner Motorsports BMW round out your top 5. Since it's a Michelin Endurance Cup race, let's take a quick glance at those championship standings as well. Starting with GTP, it's number 7, Porsche Penske Motorsports 963 that leads there with 31 points. That's an 8-point advantage, which is a fairly large advantage here after just 2 races into that championship. So look for the other cars in that class to maybe put some extra effort into maximizing points here at the halfway mark, especially of Watkins Glen. In LMP2, it's the complete opposite. It's very, very close here with the top 5 separated by 3 points. It's a tie at the top with the 22 United entry and the number 43 Inter Europol. So very, very close here in LMP2. In GTD Pro, it's the 2 BMWs at the top with the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW in first with 27 points and number 48 BMW in second with 23 points. While it's also very close in GTD, the number 70 Inception Racing Ferrari leads with 21 points. The 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche and 21 AF Corsa entries are tied for second with 20 points. And overall, the top 5 is separated by just 3 points. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to have 3 support series at the Watkins Glen this weekend, and the racing action is going to get kicked off on Friday with race 1 for the Porsche Carrera Cup North America. They get going at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time on IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel. Just after race 1 for them is going to be the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series, kicking off at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time, available on IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel. Turning the page over to Saturday, it's going to be race 2 for the Porsche Carrera Cup North America at 7:55 a.m. Eastern Time, an early wake-up call for them. And that will go on IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel. And we'll follow that up with the race for the Michelin Pilot Challenge at 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time on IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel. Qualifying for the WeatherTech Championship will be at 2:15 Eastern Time. IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel is where you can catch that action. And the day wraps up with the Super Trofeo Series. Race 2 for them goes at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time. IMSA TV, Peacock, and IMSA's YouTube channel. Finally, we wrap the weekend up with the Sailin' 6 Hours of the Glen for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. That gets underway at noon Eastern Time, and you can catch that on IMSA TV, Peacock, IMSA's YouTube channel, and on NBC. I'll also be at the Glen all week long, so if you see me walking around, make sure to say hi. Otherwise, I will be doing a meetup once again this year. Looks like going to be doing that during the second Lamborghini Super Trofeo race of the weekend, which will be Saturday from 4 o'clock until about 5 Eastern. And we're going to be doing that in the S's Grandstand as the cars go up through the S's. So if you find yourself in Watkins Glen this weekend and want to watch some Super Trofeo racing with me, I hope to see you there. Now, as I talked about earlier, there are a ton of storylines to watch for heading into this year's Sailin' 6 Hours of the Glen. Lucky for you, I have 7 of the biggest ones that I'm going to be following, and you can check those out right here. Huge shout out to all the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offintheesses or click that join button below. Once again though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.